Hey guys, it's just another Suave review, and welcome to the second part of my look at the Superman movies. Today's movie's kind of confusing, because it's Superman 2, directed by Richard Lester, and some scenes shot by Richard Donner. I explained some of this in my last Superman video, but Superman, the movie, was shot simultaneously with Superman 2. They were shot at the same time, and after having about 70% done with Superman 2, they decided they were starting to go over budget and stuff like that, so they decided to just stop Superman 2 and then finish up the first movie. So they did that, and then afterwards there's a whole falling out between Richard Donner and the producers, so they fired him. And then they hired Richard Lester to come in and finish up the movie, to shoot the stuff he didn't shoot, but also reshoot some things. And that was a bad choice, because you can tell which scenes are done by Richard Lester. He didn't take it seriously at all, and didn't treat it with the proper respect Superman deserves, honestly. So, basic gist of the plot, it centers around these three Kryptonian bad guys, led by General Zod, who's going to be the bad guy in Man of Steel. But anyway, and they've been banished to the Phantom Zone from Jor-El, because they were trying to rule over Krypton and start a new order and stuff like that. And it's set up in the first Superman movie, actually. The opening scene of the first movie is that trial scene, and that's the big build-up. They get released from the Phantom Zone, and they come to Earth to conquer it. And in the process, Clark's secret identity gets revealed to Lois, and they fall in love and stuff like that. And yeah, that's basically the gist. So, this movie is really good, honestly. Even though I bashed Richard Lester in the beginning, and I will later on, it, for the most part, works. And I think it's mostly due to Richard Donner's scenes. If the movie was all Richard Lester, it probably would have been terrible. It's really evident because of the fact that he's a comedy director. Why is he doing Superman? There's a lot of scenes or a lot of unnecessary, stupid comedy. And that's why I'm not going to give the movie as high of a score as I want to, because of that. There's a scene at the end where it's just a big battle in New York. It's a really fun scene. And at the end, all these mob of people are starting to come after the three villains, and they use their super breath to blow them all back. And some of the footage is pretty crazy. Paper, everything's flying everywhere. Cars are flying through the air. And you see a guy in roller skates going, flying backwards. And then you see a couple walk out of a restaurant and get blown away. Then the waitress walks out. You forgot your check. Oh. Yeah, that's the kind of comedy he does, Richard Lester. And it's bad. Another thing, Marlon Brando wasn't in it. He had shot everything for Superman 1 and 2, and due to I guess the contract got switched up because they came back a couple of years, maybe a year or two later to finish up Superman 2, something like that he asked for more money, so they're like, oh, nope. And now it's kind of weird because Superman's in the Fortress of Solitude and he's talking to his mom and a random Kryptonian guy. And it's what? That's the whole idea is his father's always talking to him, always going to be there. No, I guess we got his mom and that random bald Kryptonian guy. So that doesn't work. But what does work, I'll get to that. The cast is still great. I was going to call Christopher Reeve Superman because he is Superman. He's still great. There's a lot of development with him and Lois Lane. That's the great thing about the sequel. It's a sequel that doesn't retread the first. It develops the characters more. And that's what makes it good. It adds upon the first film. It doesn't just retread the same thing. And in this movie, the relationship goes farther to the point where she finds out he's Superman in a pretty stupid scene. That was also a Lester scene, by the way. But anyway, and he sacrifices his powers to be with her, which leads to a really dark scene where they're at a diner and Clark gets the snot kicked out of him, which was a Donner scene. And it's a great scene. There's some good stuff with the villains. The three Kryptonian villains are fun. They're not as serious in tone. There's a lot of serious scenes, where they crash into the White House, and some of the stuff during the fight in New York. But for the most part, they're played for like fun, kind of like Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor in the first movie, which by the way he's also back, and he's still fun as ever. So the cast still works. Everybody is still in top form, and that all works. The story is a really interesting story that, like I said, keeps the story going and doesn't try to like redo too much. The special effects are still pretty good. I don't think they hold them as well as the first film, because they're doing more, like they have the villains and Superman flying around fighting each other, and that doesn't look as good. But the effects are still pretty good. They're not like the greatest ever, but they still work. And yeah, it's a fun movie. It's a lot of fun. It's a worthy sequel, even though I find flaws with a lot of the Richard Lester stuff. I like that there were appearances by Otis from the first movie. He appeared at the beginning, and that was fun to see him. Sadly, they kind of left him there. And one thing I never really understood is the Miss Tessmacher character from the first movie. I thought she turned good at the end, and apparently in Superman 2 she's back to being a bad guy. Well, she disappears also after like 20 minutes in. Like she just disappears, and you're just kind of like, what happened to her? And Lex Luthor is still in. Another thing, kind of problem with Lex Luthor's character in these movies is that he's still into just land and real estate, and they do that a couple times in here, but they just play it for jokes, and I think it actually works in here more. Where he's just like, I have info that you need, and there's like, okay, what do you want? He goes like Australia, and then he wants Cuba and stuff like that. That's funny. Most of the movie is a fun movie. It's like most of the humor, for the most part, works. Besides 90% of the Richard Lester stuff, it just falls flat, and it's just like the three bad guys somehow using their powers to change Mount Rushmore into their faces. And there's some weird powers in this movie that it's always weird when they do these in Superman movies, because it's like we know, even if you're not a diehard fan, you know that that's not really a Superman power. And including the funniest one ever, if you've seen it's not really a power, but if you've seen Family Guy, you know, where Superman takes the cellophane S and throws it at the guy. Hilarious. It's stupid. And then whole thing at the end where they're like teleporting, and there's like that whole fight in the Fortress of Solitude where they're like teleporting around, and that's just weird. And like the scenes where the villains are in that town, which would have been better if it was bigger, if they weren't just in like a random Midwestern town. And there's a scene where like he uses his finger, Zod, like telekinesis, kind of, and moves the guy up. I don't get that. Some of those powers are really annoying, which kind of shows that Richard Lester didn't know Superman. Out of 10, even though I did bash this movie as much, I will still go 8.5. Because besides some of the bad comedy and the weird different powers, it's still a very strong sequel. The characters still shine through, and everybody's in top form, having a good time. And the storyline works. It's really cool. I like how while Zod and them are all taking over the world practically, that's when Superman's out of it. And that scene where they're at the diner, it's a really great scene, a really dark scene. And the part where they're watching the news report, and it's the president just like, I give this whole planet up to General Zod. And he just goes like, Superman, can you hear me? That stuff was cool. It's all around a very strong sequel. One of the better sequels. I wouldn't call it one of the best, per se. And it's probably the last really good Christopher Reeve Superman movie, which is sad to say. He does two more. Oh, sadly, he does two more. Also, I'm going to be doing another Superman 2 video right after this, because they did release the Richard Donner cut of Superman 2. Back in 2006, when Superman Returns came out, they made a version that adds back in the scenes that Richard Donner shot, and constructs what could have been his cut of Superman 2, which I think is a very superior film to this version. But I'm not going to just try to cram it in this video. I'm going to give it its own video so I can discuss some of the changes and why I think it's a much stronger film than the theatrical version of Superman 2, which, like I said, still fun, still worth checking out, just has a few flaws. Like, story-wise, the movie, could have given the movie a 9, but I had to bring it down to 8.5 due to, like, that awkward comedy. Basically, that's Superman 2. I can't think of, like, a crazy amount of stuff to say about it. It's actually also been a while since I've seen the theatrical version of Superman 2, because the Donner cut has kind of become my preferred version. But I've seen it a decent amount of times, especially when I was a kid, and I actually rewatched some of it recently, earlier this year, and that was kind of cool seeing it again. So I'm like, oh yeah, that stuff is in there. Oh yeah, I haven't seen that scene in a while, and basically, yeah, that's Superman 2. I'll be back for Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut. But until then, talk to you guys later.